Are we still eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? This, my friends, is going to be one of the most important talks I've ever given. So please stick with me to the end. I think you'll be very surprised by what you hear. My name is Adrian Gilbert, and I welcome you once more to the Invisible College. And today we're going to talk about a very important subject, which is really to do with the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, if you're a Christian or Jew, or probably even a Muslim as well, I think, you will have come across the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And you know the story. The couple are placed there by God. There's all sorts of trees. He tells them they can go and eat the fruits, but except for the one tree in the middle of the garden. And he says, don't eat of that tree, a tree of knowledge of good and evil. When you do, it will bring about death. And of course, they're tempted by the serpent. And what do? They go and eat the forbidden fruit of that tree. And what happens? They get cast out of the garden. Death comes into the world. They suffer. They have to grow their own food. Everything changes. Now we look upon that story as being an ancient myth, basically. An ancient myth. They had all sorts of myths in the ancient world, and this is just another one. A myth of how did we get here? Well, we started off all right, but something went wrong. We ate the wrong fruit. And just like, there are poisonous things in the garden. We get deadly nightshade growing in our garden sometimes and have to pull it out. There are things you mustn't eat. They're poisonous. And you warn your children not to go and eat certain things. They can eat the raspberries, they can eat the strawberries, the black currants even. But don't touch the deadly nightshade. Don't touch certain berries on certain trees that are very poisonous. Don't eat toadstools. They're poisonous. They'll kill you. And we understand that a father putting his children into the garden will say, he probably might try to make sure there's none of those things there. But what are there? He'll try to stop them from eating them, and he'll warn them. He said, don't touch that, it's poisonous. And we can see the same thing in this Adam and Eve story. So we look upon this story, and we look upon it as sort of mythical ancient history, not really real. It's an extrapolation. We know about children being born to parents, so there must be a parent of the whole human race, a couple, call them Adam and Eve if you like. So we look back and we say, well, something went wrong back there. It must have been Adam and Eve, and they ate the wrong thing, and it brought disaster on the rest of us. But I want to tell you something different. I want to say that this myth or legend, I prefer the word legend actually, is not just about the past, it's about the present as well. We are all of us eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We have been for thousands of years. And what do I mean by that? Why would I say such a ridiculous statement? There was no tree out there with this fancy fruit on it. Yes, there are snakes you meet sometimes. We have snakes in our garden occasionally. But it's not something that, that this legend belongs in the past. It's nothing to do with us. Well, I'm telling you, it actually is. The tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, that tree of knowledge will bring about some good. It must do. It's the tree of knowledge of good. But it's also the tree of knowledge of evil. It brings about some bad. It's a mixed blessing, is what I'm saying. And what is this tree of knowledge of good and evil? Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's what we would today call science. How could that be considered to be a tree of knowledge of good and evil. Well, science is extrapolation of ideas. The scientist begins with certain axioms, we call them, and I'm going to do other lectures on this subject, so I'm not going to go into that. But they have certain basic premises that they believe in, and then they have ideas, hypotheses about things. For example, they might have a hypothesis about gravity and how everything is drawn together, and things, you drop an apple from the top of a tower and it will accelerate with a certain speed, and that speed can be measured, that acceleration can be measured, 32 feet per second in British old standards of units. I don't know what that would be in kilometers per second or meters per second, I don't know, but it's 32 feet per second. And we work out these things, we devise what we call laws. The law of motion, the law of acceleration, the law of vibration of a violin string, all sorts of scientific laws. And then they extrapolate theories that go beyond the law to try to explain the whole thing. So you have the theory that all energy can be changed from one form to another, but energy is never created nor destroyed. So then we extrapolate from that the idea that there can be no increase in energy in the universe. It's there. So there must have been a moment when that energy was first created. Hence the idea of the Big Bang. Yeah, the Big Bang, suddenly everything is created in a microsecond, and everything happens, and within a second or two, all matter that exists and starts forming galaxies, starts forming planets and suns and expanding till we get to the present. And that is a theory, but unfortunately, science has a nasty habit of turning theories into beliefs that this is something that is. You have to believe this because it is. You have to believe it. But what starts off as a theory at one time becomes axiomatic at another. And this is the situation we're in. And we end up with a science which is a huge hodgepodge of different theories, different discoveries, different bits and pieces. A bit like Windows, Microsoft Windows, it's all tagged on together. So if you were designing it fresh, you wouldn't do it that way. But because it's been developed over centuries, it's a huge grab bag of all these different bits and pieces. They don't fit very well together. They bump into each other, and things have to be kind of smoothed over. So you end up with this curious kind of curate's egg that we call science. And it can do some very good things. For example, medicine, what we discovered about the human body and how certain drugs can be used to improve its function is good. Certainly up to a point. We've learned how to operate on bodies to fix things that are broken. That's very good. We've managed to get ourselves to a situation where famines are actually quite rare in the world because we know how to farm the land much better than we did in the past, and that's good. So there are things that are good, but we also find that we do things that are causing major problems for us. We cause extinction of certain species. We pollute the rivers and the sea. We use up resources that were perhaps better not used up. We increase our populations to unsustainable numbers, and they're going to carry on increasing, or so we think. So the science that we have is a mixed blessing, but also it has this one really, really terrible flaw, which is it's atheistic. What do I mean by that? Well, it teaches us that everything that exists and how it progresses is accidental. There were just, this universe was here, all those stars you see out there, they're all dead. Uh, they're just bombs in the air, in the sky. But by some fluke, this one planet was just in the right place, far enough away from the sun that it wouldn't be scorched by it, but close enough to be kept warm, well, warm enough, so that you could have water in 3 different states. You can have ice, you can have liquid water, and you can have vaporized water. Everything just nice, Goldilocks style, just nice. And out of that, molecules, whatever reason, started binding together to form primitive amino acids. And those somehow combined together, and we had the first cell, the first living amoeba happened. Wasn't that a fluke? And then that amoeba, it somehow started developing into other things, and before you know it, you've got frogs, you've got fish, you've got all sorts of animals, you've got wheat, you've got trees, you've got nature as we see it today, and you've got us. It's all a great cosmic accident. Now, this is just a theory, but it's presented as though it was fact. And this is again one of the great flaws of science. It doesn't have an answer how you could have complex things like human bodies, the most complex thing we know, and all the other animals that we see and nature and all the things that we've built. We know that for us to build, for Elon Musk to be building his massive spaceship, Starship to go to Mars, he hopes, for that to happen, it takes a lot of very intelligent people to work very hard to get over all the different problems, the different snags, the different situations, the systems that have to work smoothly together to make something like that can escape Earth's gravity and carry his starship into space so it could fly to Mars. We know that takes a lot of work and a lot of intelligence, but we think that the much more complex human body happens by accident. It's daft and it's ridiculous. It takes intelligence. But science does not want to admit that there's any other intelligence than ourselves. We are the crown of creation. And this is the great sin of eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And we have to find our way back from that, find our way to reconnecting with that intelligence that brought about nature. Because nature doesn't go around building factories to smelt things, to dig up the earth and smelt out the iron and the vanadium and and make the chlorine from things and do all these chemical processes to make something like a car. It does it by growing it. It's a completely different process. Whatever nature wants, it grows. And it uses life to do that. But we don't know how to do that. We're not capable of doing that. What we do, well, we are a little bit, and that we, certain drugs are manufactured by growing things and extracting the drug from the growing thing. That's true. But we don't have the same knowledge that nature does, or that whoever created nature in the first place does. And we need to get back into communion with that. And I'm not talking about going out dancing around in nature, worshipping nature. I don't believe in that at all. But I do believe that we need to reconnect with the higher intelligence that put us here, what you might call God. And that's what this channel is all about. I went to university, at age 19. I went to university to study science. I was going to become a chemical engineer. and I wanted to learn about chemistry. But what I really wanted to do was to find out the truth about why am I here, what's it all for. And I believed at that time that science had the answers. But within my first year, actually within my first term, it became very clear to me that I wasn't going to find it there, that I was going to have to look elsewhere. And I spent 50 years looking elsewhere, finding answers, and that's what I'm sharing with you now. And that's what I hope to leave as a legacy. Because I'm an old man now, I won't be here much longer, but I'd hope to leave a legacy of ideas that other people can then take further. So thank you for listening. I hope you found this a little bit stimulating, something to think about over your morning coffee, or your pint of beer in the evening. Something else to think about. How are we eating from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil today? I'll leave that with you. Bye-bye.